Welcome back to Through the Veil podcast. I'm Elle.
Camille.
We're excited today to share with you Miranda. Miranda, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I have been born and raised in Utah, and I'm a wife and I have 4 kids, and I keep busy with them all day, and I I develop my spiritual gifts on the side, as I'm pretty passionate about that, and I'm here to share it, and I appreciate you letting me on your podcast.
We appreciate having you. I think one of the fun things that we get to do in this podcast is that we get to talk to individuals, like people, real people who have real lives, who are doing real things like parenting 4 children and like talk to them about how um, their spiritual gifts and their beliefs around them impact their actual real lives. And so Miranda is a perfect case of that. And so we are going to get to hear all about her story today.
All
Oh,
right.
yeah.
So, Miranda, I want to know, when did you first realize that you felt connected to the other side? Is that how you would kind of describe your spiritual gift? Is this connection? Yes. So I am connected to, the spiritual world, and I have kind of honed and developed my gift to be able to do that. Um, so I guess the story would kind of start way back in childhood, and a lot of it is hindsight. Um, these are experiences throughout my life that I can look back on now that I understand, that I have had a lot of spiritual experiences since a child. So going back, I guess my first experience would be, um, when I was being babysat at my tutu's house. So for anyone who doesn't know, tutu means grandmother in Hawaiian, but I had a step grandmother that went by tutu. So I was staying at her house. I think I was probably, I would say maybe 8 or 9. Um, and I was being babysat so that my mom could be with my grandmother while my great grandmother was in the hospital transitioning to the spirit world. And I remember, gosh, emotions. Um, I remember playing in a dollhouse in the guest bedroom that I was staying in, and looking and seeing my great grandmother standing in the curtains. And I was like, why are you standing in the curtains? And it was kind of like an appearance of her, kind of like, it felt very warm and loving and kind of like a goodbye. And I didn't know that she was passing away at that time. So, but I knew that she was there. And I was like, why are you standing in the curtains? Because, and how do you know where I'm at? Like, I'm at a totally different grandmother's house. But so looking back, I'd say that was probably the first experience that I had, like seeing, I felt like I could see her. I don't feel like it was like my mind's eye, um, but she was there. So growing up, I was always a very terrified child. I was terrified of everything. I
Understand that
couldn't,
feeling. I
yeah,
represent that feeling.
yes. And what's funny is there's a lot of other people with spiritual gifts who share a lot of these same stories. Like, it's
Right?
amazing.
It's a pattern. It's a
Yes,
pattern. It happens.
it We've is. Seen it for sure on the podcast. Yes. So I couldn't stand it if my brothers were watching a scary movie downstairs. Like, I wasn't watching the movie, but I knew it was on and I hated it. It's terrifying. And continuing to grow up, I began to have really bad nightmares. So the nightmares came, I was very difficult to console and go to sleep at night because I felt like there was something there. And um, you know, and I was dead serious about it. It wasn't like, you know, typical nightmares. Like, it felt like there was something there, and I felt like I could hear things while I was trying to sleep. And it could have been my brothers downstairs snoring, but um, Anyways, so I grew up just very scared. And then I also had those developed into sleep paralysis, where at night it felt like I was awake and it felt like there was kind of a being coming to get me. And it was very scary and it happened a lot. And my sister, she could always hear me screaming at night because I was trying to get her to wake up and come wake me up.
Did
Um,
she, or did she just ignore you?
she ignored me.
Sisters. We need a legitimate help, man.
You know, come on. So, I was very open with other people as well, like about these experiences, and we talk about it. And at some point in my teens, probably late teens, I started to chase my fears away by learning how to like scary movies and embracing these things. And I don't know if that helped me or or hurt it, but anyways, so going a little bit further down the road, eventually things stopped. And also, I would say when I was having a lot of these feelings and afraid to go to sleep, I would open up my scriptures, and I feel like every time I opened them up, there was always just something that it almost didn't matter what I read. There was just something in there that helped to calm my spirit and be able to go to sleep at night.
Just like a power from the book itself.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Like I couldn't even tell you anything specific that it was saying, but I felt better. Um,
I did very similar things. I remember very specific nights where I didn't even open them. I would just like hold my scriptures and be like,
yes,
thanks.
yes, it brought so much comfort.
Power of belief in an object for sure.
Oh, definitely. Continuing down my little path of life. When I was in my early 20s, I was 21 and or I guess 20 to 21. My mom, she I have to cut some of this out.
You're fine.
um, she was diagnosed with cancer, and 11 months later, she succumbed to um, the diagnosis. And try not to cry. I was very lost. I was very lost for a long time. Um, and obviously, it's still very hard for me. It doesn't go away. I feel like it left a really big hole in my heart, and I kind of fell away. I pulled away from a lot of the foundations that she had taught me in my life, and um, I questioned if there was an afterlife anymore. And because for at least 10 years, it felt like she had just disappeared. Although I will say, I think it was 2 days after she passed, I had a visitation dream, and where she came to me just looking absolutely stunning and beautiful. And she told me that everything was going to be okay. Um, and I hold that memory very dear to my heart, and I it felt so real. It was absolutely real to me, and I feel like it's really been something that I've held on to through all the time of my doubt and my being lost without her in my life, and trying to go through my life trying to figure out what what do you do, like how do you do these things. Like normally my mom does all these things for me, and she helps me through things and she teaches me, and now I'm figuring it out on my own, and I can't call her anymore.
Can I ask, a lot of people, we haven't really gone too deep into visitation dreams yet on this podcast, but many, many people get them. And some people don't. Um, why do you think she came to you? Do you have any sense of why that is? Or why you got to see that?
I often I'm a believer in things being planted. And I do believe that the Lord will give you what you need in order to like stay afloat, I guess. Um, I felt like I needed that. Had I not had that, um, maybe I would still end up in the same place that I am today. But I feel like it brought me so much comfort because I've thought about it so frequently throughout all these years. And it has just given me something to hold on to, even when I didn't feel like I could feel her. I at least know that she came to me.
Right. How miraculous. I mean, people who are skeptical of things like dream visitations and things, they would probably explain that way something with your subconscious processing through her death and the desire to have any connection with her and the latch onto that, bringing it to the forefront of your mind. But I don't think that you can really argue with the comfort and the level of stability that it gives you to process through that grief. I mean, really, what a tender blessing that that is. Whether or not you want to believe in the actuality doesn't really matter because you experienced it and to
Yeah.
you it was pivotal.
Yeah. And I will say during that time I was having a lot of other crazy dreams, and I feel like I have a very distinct feeling between that dream and all the other dreams. I had other good dreams, other bad dreams, where I knew in the other dreams, I knew that she was not alive. And it was like I was aware of that in those other dreams. But in this other dream, it felt like there was a motherly, loving connection with her.
Yeah. You can I'm a big dreamer too. I dream a lot, like every night, and I'll tell my husband in the morning, "Oh, last night I dreamt about this," and like they're amusing, right? But when I have a dream that has spiritual significance, like we've talked about this before on the podcast, it carries a certain essence, a certain weight. It feels different, it sticks differently, and it
Yeah.
stands out to me. And I feel like I need to focus on it. And if the message from the dream isn't obvious, then I need to like kind of um, distinguish what it is and use my gifts to, and pray and just kind of see what is God trying to tell me, or what's the message from the person in the dream, because it just feels different.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely does. I guess fast forward quite some time, I've always had these feelings like she just kind of vanished after that. I was always a little upset that I couldn't feel her anymore. Um, and so I guess in 2020, and I get sorry if I can like rewind just a tiny bit. I want to say before she ever passed, so like during my younger years, I always like I would watch like Teresa Caputo, and I always wished that that was me. And I was frustrated and upset that that wasn't me. So at that time, I had never experienced a loss. So these are just one of those things that I look back on now, of these types of things where it's kind of, I can see these little blips of
It was
spiritual
pulling your attention.
communication. Yeah.
Something was pulling your attention in a direction. How
Yes.
interesting.
And so it doesn't feel all that surprising to me that this is the road that I've gone down. Um, so anyways, in 2020, I consider this year to be kind of my when I was woken up to and paying attention to these spiritual gifts. Um, you
As
know,
many people were in 2020.
so many
Shift,
people, so
shifty
many.
for us.
Yes. So, you know, life was like very busy. Like I had toddlers, I had just had a baby, I had just had my fourth baby in 2019, and just mom life and doing all kinds of things, going to the gym
that's
and like,
that's not busy enough, mom life.
well, now I'm like, that wasn't very, I eat my words. I thought I was busy. um, but so in 2020, everything shuts down and I find myself in a lot of silence. I'm sitting there a lot and I start to notice things that were happening. So a lot of synchronicities where I would think something and then I would see something that like it was like this synchronized dance. It's
It's like a
yes,
parallel coincidence.
yes, exactly. And I would think about something like that was like a little fact of something. And then I would kind of hear this voice that was like, go ahead, look at it, go see if it's true. And then I'd look it up and I was like, well, look at that. So these things were happening. And I also felt like some spiritual activity was happening around the house. So, toys would turn on. Like that could have just been like an air pressure change. I'll give it that. Hearing little creaks and then but I started paying attention to it. And when I really paid attention to it is I was out in the shed with my husband and he was woodworking and this drill just fell off the wall. It was on a sturdy hook and it just fell off. And he laughed and said, "Oh, it's probably a ghost." And normally I would laugh with him, but I was like, I think it is. I was like, I was really considering that like something's going on here. And I felt like there was a spirit trying to get my attention. I don't know who it was. I was like, it could be my mom. I don't know. It could be my stepdad. I don't know. Um, but I started paying attention and then I started kind of looking into things a little bit more like about what's going on. And um,
Explanations. You needed an
yes,
explanation.
I needed an explanation. And then I started looking up ways to kind of tune into some of these things that are happening. And I learned, like, oh, you need to meditate. So I started meditating and, just trying to see if I could tune in for myself, but though I wasn't sure yet. And I decided that I wanted to go see another person who was a spirit communicator. And I wanted to see if she could pick up on if this is something that's going on with me or not without me saying anything to her. And
Like people generally do with these kinds of intuitive
people
type people.
do, they do. And
Everyone wants to be validated.
I needed validation. I absolutely did. Well, it's like one of those things. I'm like, am I crazy? Is this something that like I can feel my desire to want to pursue, but I want to know if like, is this for me? You
Right.
know, or is
Am I
it just what I
serious for
want?
it? Do I actually have this ability?
Yes. So I went to see this woman who is fabulous, and I really wanted to also see if my mom could be there as well. I wanted so badly to see if she would communicate with me. And it was an interesting session with her. She actually did not bring through my mom, but she brought through a lot of other people that had messages for other people in my life. And at the end, she almost started instructing me on things that I should do to continue to open my gift. And then she was like, "Do you know what I'm talking about?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And that's what I needed. And it turned into a conversation of kind of what to do going forward. Um, and leaving her office, I wasn't disappointed that I didn't hear from my mom because I felt like I was bringing gifts to other people. And I do find that to be a little interesting as well because I almost feel like I was kind of being used in the way that I am used now as
Hmm.
kind of that person that brings loving and healing messages to other people.
Right. It's a service. It's all service oriented.
Yes. And I was very excited about that. And some of those messages for some of the people, like, I feel like it was very healing and validating for them.
I think that is something interesting worth pointing out with all intuitive gifts, but specifically my area of expertise being spirit communication, you don't always get what you want. You don't always get you can't control someone else. You can't control even spirits, right? People who have passed on. They're going to tell you what they feel like you need to know. They're going to tell you what they feel like is for your betterment, your growth, your highest good, if you will. And it might not be what you want to hear, and it might not be who you want to hear from either, because there is a greater awareness maybe of what is the best direction and what you need in order to accomplish that direction than we particularly see from our closed-minded perspective here.
Yep, exactly. And, you know, I feel like with that as well, I don't feel like I was meant to hear from her yet.
Hmm.
Interesting.
But it definitely gave me that belief that the spirit world is just right here. And it also gave me that kind of like the go ahead of it's okay to keep exploring this as a gift for my, my own being. Um, and through, so I did pursue it. And I also, through that journey of learning how to tune into these abilities and share it with other people, it has healed me with my own grief. I won't say that grief ever disappears, but it has given me that comfort that there is more after this. And I believe it 100%. I believe it. And, when you first start to do things where you're sitting with another person and bringing in their loved one, and you think you're making it up, but they're like, yes, that's right, yes, we did this, yes, that's how they passed, and they're validating all these things that are coming through. And you know I there are so many stories that I have with all of those things, but you know even the first time I had ever felt the very first time I had ever felt the passing of a person, I was waiting for my turn to see if I could bring in a person's loved one, and I was like, oh no, I feel like I'm getting COVID. Like I started feeling like I was getting sick, and I was like, oh no, not right now. It turns out that her loved one passed away from COVID. So like there
You're
are so many ways that you can like tune into these types of abilities. It's you're feeling things, you're seeing things like as if it's your imagination. So it's easy to think that you might be making it up, um,
Until you get that validation.
until you get the validation, and that's so key.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it really establishes evidence,
Yes.
credibility. And that I think is the really big indicator between establishing belief as when you're dealing with someone you are giving a session to, you are helping, you are, like providing this service for. It's key for them, but it's also key for you.
Yes. I was thinking
'Cause
that too.
it's
Yeah.
really easy to go too far, and there are boundaries. There are appropriate and inappropriate uses
Yeah.
of anything, but especially intuitive gifts.
And
And it's
ethics.
something that really ethics, and it really keeps you grounded in where you should be and where you are.
Yeah.
Um, but I will also say, Miranda, you are somebody that I've noticed is particularly a body feeler, talking about the different kinds of ways that we experience that kind of information come through, especially with things like cause of death. You tend to get them in your body as a very big feel, right?
Yes. Yep.
Um, I've practiced with you many times, and there are particular instances I remember where you just nailed it. Particularly, you've brought through my own brother-in-law and his mode of passing very specifically. I remember you feeling that in a very visceral type of way.
Yeah.
Um, how how do you handle that? I mean, it's not comfortable. There's a lot of things that you don't necessarily want to have to experience in your body, especially flying to somebody's death, how
Right.
they've passed.
You
Was
know,
it scary?
I will say, I don't feel scared by it. I've never been uncomfortable by something. Like, obviously, when it's not me, like, for a second, you'll feel like it is you. Like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling nauseous. Like, that's not a comfortable feeling. But it's interesting because as soon as you relay that, it goes away completely. And then that was not yours. That was not your information. And it is like information that comes through the body. And it doesn't bother me even seeing things, through kind of my imaginative eye. That's how I see things. Um, I would say feeling and seeing is probably my strongest way of getting information, but no matter how bad it might sound to other people, I have never felt like not good about it, if that makes
Mhm.
any sense. I don't know how to explain it very well. It's not scary though. I've
It's
never
not
been
threatening.
threatened by it. It's not threatening at all. And, it's creating descriptors for the other person so that they also know without a doubt that you're communicating with their loved one. And I will say, I'm going to add this as well. This is part of where I'm super passionate with how I communicate with the spirit world, is because I know what it feels like to feel like your loved one have just disappeared and vanished. It's a horrible feeling. And so I am very passionate about people feeling that their loved ones are with them and knowing that they are. I mean, I can't think of a greater gift, honestly.
Right. And the validation comes before the message, which is beautiful. And so you're just kind of laying the groundwork so that you can share what you feel the spirit wants to share with their loved one. And that's really the best part. So,
Yeah. And if you can't lay out all those descriptors that are very specific to a person, every person in this world is like their own fingerprint. Every
mhm.
person is so unique. And so if you're giving people such specific evidence of their loved one, without that, a message doesn't matter, because I could tell you anything you want to hear, right?
Right. And things
But
you don't.
and things that you don't, because there are also those things that come
Also
through.
those things.
Read like these sessions of communicating with your loved ones in spirit, they're not always going to be pleasant, because not everyone has lived a happy flowery life. Like, there are things to apologize for. Sometimes they don't want to apologize, and
There's always hardships and traumas and
there's a lot.
hurts. There's hurts,
Yes. Yep.
things left unhealed
Yep.
with passings more frequently than infrequently.
Absolutely. um so I guess somewhere in here, Elle, she gave me a reading, and for the first time, after all of this time that I had spent learning how to use my gift and not hearing from her through other people, even because you're practicing with a lot of other people that are practicing, I had never heard from her yet. And it didn't deter me. Like, I still kept to it. Like, knowing that there is a spirit world, it fueled me to keep going, regardless if my mom was coming through yet. And I
So that
felt,
was the hope, right? I feel like this is an important thing because a lot of people, everyone will lose things. Everyone will lose someone. We all will. Death is a part of life. It's unavoidable and it's inescapable. And a lot of people pursue these kinds of paths, or people who have these gifts, with that hope of like wanting to hear from and connect to one specific person. And so I'm sure it was hard for you to go that many years with not, but keeping that hope alive is incredibly encouraging.
it is. The hope stayed alive. And, I'll be lying if I said I didn't feel a little desperate at times. Like, come on, come on.
Where are you? Where are
It's
you?
okay. And so there was one day when I got a chance to just do a one-on-one with you, and you brought her through. And that, it was so amazing. It honestly, it's transformed, like everything that I felt leading up to that, it completely changed everything that I felt about what I was doing with spirit communication, but also in my healing journey. Um, it felt like she was standing next to you talking, um, like the same humor. Um, she even, through you, I don't know if you remember this, but she kind of got you to laugh a little bit. And she said that someday you're going to go back to the temple again. And I laughed. So at the time I was like, yeah, we'll see. um, but the whole experience was just absolutely beautiful and very specific as well. Um, and one of the things that you even touched on that sounded like she was talking to you was, the way that how I was there with her and kind of sent her spirit off, um, kind of that release of the soul, and it validated that. And that was something that I wanted so badly to hear from. And I feel like Elle was, I don't know if I should, like, she was the same religion, I guess. So I feel like Elle has a greater understanding. It's like, I feel like my mom was able to come through her in a way that other people probably could not.
Oh, right. Because you're getting information from the other side and you have to put it through your own lens. Well, if Elle shares a similar lens as your mom, then that communication is going to be more fluid,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's easier to bring through specifics of things
Hmm.
that are important to that person because I have a frame of reference
Well, and
for
Exactly.
that.
I feel like that piece too, like with the temple and all of that, like I feel like that was very important for my mom to be able to say.
Oh, okay. So she was waiting because she could have shown a temple visual to somebody. They'd be like, I don't know what this building is. She's showing
Yeah,
me a
the
building.
building.
Like
Yeah,
it wouldn't have translated. So Elle could translate the way your mom communicates, essentially.
exactly. Yep. And yeah, so that for me was a huge gift. So I have also been healed, like not completely because grief never goes
Right.
away,
Right.
but like what a gift. Again, what a gift. I've continued to try and refine and get better and practice with people, and I have had great support by my husband. I'm sure sometimes he doesn't understand why I like doing this, but I do. I do, and I'm very passionate about it, and I feel to my core that um these things are good and they're meant to be shared with other people. Um so I guess most recently in it, kind of where it's starting to tie up to where I am today, um through some very interesting circumstances and through my practice of being able to listen to promptings from the spirit world and feeling that connection with God, I have developed a strong connection. um I felt there was one specific day that I prayed to God about what I'm supposed to do. Um, I guess this is kind of a crossroads between like my religious views and if I should go to church or not. And he answered in a very specific way. I asked him a very specific way of showing me that I'm supposed to, and he answered it to those specifics. And I also feel like my mom had a control in this because, you know, I was ready to completely walk away from all the church views. And obviously in Utah, it's very dominant in the culture. So my ability to listen to God and those promptings has led me back. And before nearly breaking away from it, I I thought about that reading that Elle gave me, or that session that Elle gave me. and how my mom said that someday I'm going to go back to the temple. And in that moment, I thought, oh, she was wrong. Because I thought in that moment that, everything was going to be final. And so, 3 weeks later, I'm, I'm going back to the the church that my mom had brought me up in. And I I feel so much that this is where I'm supposed to be. And I'm developing a greater understanding for how God wants me to use this gift. Like I'm seeing the ways that I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It feels very God-given, and I have a great reverence for it. Um so yeah, this is kind of where I am now. And um yeah.
I love I love how you said the word reverence, because it really is a sacred thing, and I think there has to be this strong element of gratitude for the gift, because I think anyone with the desire to develop it can, because that's what we're taught in the scriptures is you can develop, ask and you shall receive. But the fact that God kind of, we were talking about earlier, like he kind of piqued your interest or you felt pulled in a certain direction. He was leading you towards this gift to maybe even identify that you have it, and to have that element of like humility and gratitude, like if there's reverence around it. And when you've talked about your mom, I've gotten like full head chills. She's just feeling very um around.
Present.
Yes.
It's, I think, another important part. I mean, the I guess the pro of getting older. What is this? What's the word? Help me out here.
Aging.
The upside, the
Okay.
upside of getting older is that you can have retrospect, right? You can turn and you can see the movements and the
Yeah.
directions and the tweaks that seem to have been made by somebody bigger than you.
Yes.
And all of these little things were leading you on this beautiful path of healing. Um, that you may not have found had things gone a different way.
Right.
And the fact that you were able to, connect with your mother and have it come full circle in that way by leading you to understand yourself and understand this aspect of you that had always been there and been somewhat confusing, that then became, full bloom and something beautiful that you could wrap up in, as well as gain healing from, and then share and spread that healing with other people. I think that's amazing. And the fact, I mean, I had a similar experience with the development of my personal gifts. They have taught me more about, hearing the voice of God, about connecting with the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost, than anything else, because it's in the doing of it. It's in the shifting of your attention to listen to those still small subtle things. That is how spirit moves. All spirit, not just God's spirit.
Yeah.
And so um spirit is such a subtle medium, such a subtle fluid, that you really have to learn pay attention to pay attention, like you were saying in 2020, like suddenly something just shifted and you were noticing all the things, and it's like a puzzle that you put together until you realize, oh, this is what it looks like, this is what it feels like,
Yes.
and then you understand, and then applying that, to receiving answers to prayers, or gaining guidance, or even feeling, the hand of God in your life, as well as the presence of the loved ones who are around you. Like it's all connected. It's all part of the same thing. And I love that. I'm really passionate about it too. Like the healing that comes from an understanding of this is miraculous. It's singularly amazing. And I really am driven to share that. And so we meet up there, Miranda.
Exactly. Yeah.
Similar propensities.
Yes, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
and I love too with the hindsight, I can see the workings of Heavenly Father, God, you know, I can see the workings of him through my entire life. like setting these things up for me, and knowing also that my mom would pass. And so it's just been such this like dualistic gift that has healed me.
Mm-hmm.
I am so grateful. There's not a day that goes by that I do not have absolute gratitude for this type of a spiritual gift, that I can also pass it on to other people. Because I used to be almost afraid to hold space for other people's grief. And now, and even after my mom had died, I didn't know how to be there for other people who had lost someone as well. And now I am able to be there for somebody else in a way that I never imagined I could. And, I think that's part of the spiritual gifts that God gives to people, is to help other people who are grieving. You're healing people's hearts. You're healing, you know, like, I don't want to say the sick, but I think it can cause mental sickness. It can cause physical sickness. Like, if you're not taking care of your body because you're going through grief and you don't know how to cope, like, this can be that gift that can help give somebody that thing where they can learn to get better, and they can learn to live their life in a healthy way, the way that their loved one would want them to be.
Right. It
Yeah,
gives hope.
it
Yes.
does. And I think it's interesting because you're not the first person that I know who has said that this gift has actually brought them around back to their faith background, their faith tradition. You would think, or maybe, I mean, I've heard people say, oh, these gifts, like, they're not legitimate because of this verse in the Bible. And, you know, um, I've seen this gift actually bring people back around to
Yeah.
God, religion. And it's interesting because, like, you'd think it'd be the opposite, but it's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
It restores.
It does. Well, and I feel like because I have been brought back around, it's creating more like firmness. It's no, like, I'm trying to articulate what I'm thinking here. It's like it's grounding these experiences that I've had, and it's saying, like, help me out here. I don't know if
It's
you're like,
it's
you
like
get what I'm
witnessing
saying.
for them. It's witnessing what it is in actuality. Like it's almost proving the principles and the things that you've always been taught. And it's giving them reality. It's
Yeah.
making them real.
Yes,
I feel the same way.
exactly. And my mom always taught me also that the spirit world is right here.
Mm.
My brother, I still remember her being in the hospital one time, and my brother embracing me and letting me know at that moment that he's like, did you know that the spirit world is right here? It's not up in the sky, it's right here. And I remember in that moment, sorry, I was lost. I was lost in that moment. I was about to lose my mom. Like, my grief was rich and deep. It was, I was in the thick of it. And when he said that it was right here and it's not far, I have never forgotten that. And that's another thing that I really love about um, the gospel that I am a part of, is that belief right there that the spirit world is right here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And that God is a God of miracles
Yep.
and of love.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Thanks, Miranda. Thank you so much for sharing with us your journey and all your points of healing and your growth. I think it's relatable. A lot of people have similar experiences, and like we always say, everybody has or will lose someone. So, um, how miraculous and how beautiful the movements of a God who loves us and leads us in the way that we need to go, whether or not we're willing to listen eventually.
Yep.
So,
But learning to
thank
listen
you.
will never lead you astray.
That's right. That's right. As long as we're listening.
Yes, that's key.
Um, Thank you for sharing all your experiences. And remember that you can get in contact with us, everybody, on our Facebook page, which is called
Through the Veil podcast community, but you can get a direct link to it if you just go on our website, which
our
is
website.
throughtheveilpodcast.com.
And through there, you can email us. You can get in contact with us. If you have a story that you'd like to share, we would love to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So please reach out and find a way to get connected.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.